My name is Péter Müller. I'm a professor at the University of Pécs, Hungary. Before I speak about my essay, let me mention a few things which led me to Shakespeare in my earlier years. In high school, the first thing I can recall in connection with Shakespeare that I had to make a presentation on Hamlet in one of the classes. Then in my hometown, in my high school and college years, there was a Shakespeare cycle in the local theater, annually a new production of one of his plays. It included the very first Hungarian production of Titus Andronicus. There was The Tempest in the New Hungarian translation, Comedy of Errors, and many others. Then when I was a college student, I wrote an essay in the circle of scientific research group, which has a biannual conference. The essay was about The Tempest, and I awarded the first prize for this paper. In the current research and in my essay, I give a general framework of the place of Shakespeare in Hungarian theater after 1990. At the beginning, I discuss the theatrical structure in Hungary, which is basically dominated by professional companies who has their own building and who perform in a repertoire system. This system of the theater structure was set up in 1949, and although there was a strong and harsh change in the structure of all other cultural institutions after 1990, the theatrical structure remained basically the same. Then I outline those directors who produced most Shakespeares in their career, and I go back to two examples before the 1990 period. One is Sándor Hevesi, who was director, both artistic and managing director of the National Theatre from 1922 till 32, who directed 40 Shakespeare productions in that decade, and he organized them into cycles. It has a strong influence on Hungarian Shakespeare reception. The next director whom I mention is Tamás Major, whose career is focused after the 1950s. He was a leading actor, director, and he was artistic director of the National Theatre, and he produced 29 Shakespeares in his career. He directed 29, but he also performed in leading roles, including Iago, Shylock, Richard III, and some other leading characters. And then I arrive at the 1990 period, and I study those directors in whose oeuvre Shakespeare has a significant role. Here I mention only two: Gábor Zsámbéki, who was artistic and managing director of Katona József Theatre, which was founded in 1982, and he held this position till 2010. Besides, he was a member of the Theatre Union of Europe, part of this period. He directed 12 Shakespeares, including Hamlet, twice. The other one whom I would like to mention is Gábor Tompa, who resides in Romania, in Cluj, in Hungarian Kolozsvár, in whose oeuvre Shakespeare is a significant part. His most recent direction was The Merchant of Venice, for which he awarded the Best Romanian Production Award in 2019. But there are, of course, several other directors who produced important artistic Shakespeare productions. Then I arrive at those newly founded companies which were set up after the change of the system after 1990, and I mentioned 4 of them. They are basically, as their origin, independent companies working more freely than a repertoire theatre. The first one was based on a Shakespeare production, A Midsummer Night's Dream, produced in 1995, and it was such a successful production that the director, who himself not only directed the play, but he made a new translation and he made the set design for this, János Csányi, got the opportunity to found a new theater, and it became Bárka, which means the Ark. And in the foundation of the theater, he was led by some ideas, examples of Shakespearean times. So the company included playwrights, for example, who wrote plays for the company's members, for particular actors. Unluckily, the company, the theater terminated in 2014. And there's another company which never produced Shakespeare, but in their concept something similar appears as what I mentioned in connection with Bárka. This is Béla Péter and his company. Béla Péter is a writer, director, and actor who writes exclusively for his own company, for his actors, and it is somehow similar to the way how the Elizabethan theatre worked in the late 16th, early 17th century. And then I come at the topic of relevant companies with relevant Shakespeare repertoire. Afterwards, I study which are those plays which that are produced the most. And let me list the first on this list. Romeo and Juliet was produced after 1990 61 times, Midsummer Night's Dream 54 times, Hamlet 53 times, and Twelfth Night 41 times. Almost all the 37 Shakespeare plays had been produced, and the reason why these plays are at the lead, at least Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet, can be explained partly because these 2 plays are in the high school curriculum, and the students have to study these 2 plays of Shakespeare, and theaters, mostly local theaters, regional theaters, put these plays frequently on their repertoire, so the students can have an experience of these plays not only by reading but by having them seen in the theater. Then in a short part, I study what Shakespeare productions got award in the past 3 decades, in what aspect, directing, actor in a leading role, etc. Then I touch upon the translations. Quite a lot of new translations were made in the past 3 decades of Shakespeare. Mostly because theaters requested new translations for their new productions. And in the conclusion, I put Shakespeare's productions into broader statistics. Shakespeare was on the Hungarian stage 520 times in the last 3 decades. And I look into my statistics. If we compare these statistics to other non-Hungarian dramatists from any age, any period of time, the next one after Shakespeare's 520 is Chekhov with 211, then comes Molière with 199, then Goldoni with 134, Bertolt Brecht with 130, and Ibsen with 91. These are the top 5 among these leading dramatists in Hungarian theatre. So Shakespeare is very much at the top. It means that he is a significant, dominant, and exclusive playwright for Hungarian theatre after the 1990 period. And finally, I would like to mention that studying these 3 decades, beside the number of Shakespeare productions, it cannot be declared that there were any director or theatre company who would dedicate the program or profile to Shakespeare, but we can say that Shakespeare plays a role as a primus inter pares, so first among the equals, in the last 3 decades of Hungarian theatre. Speaking about my future plans, I would like to focus on narrower issues. One of my major interests is the use of theatrical space, which in Shakespeare's time was quite different than how it became when the bourgeois theatre was set up, and most of the Hungarian theatre buildings are organized in this shape. So I would like to study what directors can do and how they manage to use this quite different space when they produce Shakespeare. Another topic which I'm interested in, a comparative analysis of the same play in different period of times. For example, Hamlet productions before 1990 and after the change of the system, in their aesthetics, in their political message, and how they shape the aesthetics of contemporary Hungarian theatre. That was all. Thank you very much.